Matt Williams, I work for FWC and we run our boats pretty hard. We have lots of engines with very high hours. I think key to longevity is running the engine across the entire RPM range coupled with great maintenance. That's what I'm saying, man. Like that is exactly that's it, is running the engine over the entire RPM spectrum, and it runs evenly. That's how you get even wear. That's how you get the best out of the engine. That's why the break-in period for most engines have always been varying the RPMs. I've heard a lot of people talk about different things about the break-in, whether you should do it or don't do it. I'm just going to go off of basically what is normally said. A lot of people say the break-in, oh, you just need to run it for 10 hours under a certain RPM range, and that's not really true. The basically all brands in their break-in period go like this. They want you to run varying the RPMs. So that means that for the first 2 hours, you're going to run, say, 10 minutes at 1,000 RPM. And then you're going to run 10 minutes at 1,500 RPM. Then 10 minutes at 2,000 RPM. And then 10 minutes at 3,500 RPM. And you're going to continue every 5-10 minutes varying that RPM and not going wide open throttle for more than 5 minutes every hour. And then don't do a lot of high idle time. So basically in the first 2 hours, first 10 hours, you don't want to run the engine at idle for an hour. That's what they don't want you to do. They want you to break it in at varied RPMs for 10 hours with no more at wide open throttle than 5 minutes at a time. So really, a break-in period isn't staying below a specific RPM. It is changing the RPM. Run 4,500 for 10 minutes, then bring it back to 35, then bring it up to 55, then bring it down to 15, then take it all the way to wide open throttle and run for 5 minutes, and then just continue varying those RPMs for 10 hours. That is the most common break-in period. And so if you think about it, if that's what they want you to do for break-in period, then that's what you're going to want to do over the life of the engine. So running evenly, let's say at 100%, you're running 20% of the time at wide open, you're running 20% at trolling, 20% at idle, 20% at mid-range. Like you're varying across the whole spectrum, which is generally, when you pull a download, what it looks like. Most of the recreational people, when you pull a download, again, very minimal time spent at wide open throttle. Most recreational people are looking at fuel economy, and they're looking at the ability that they have to run the engine. This is kind of a discussion. We got a couple comments down here about this, that talking about the RPM and the horsepower range. So generally, when we're talking about not being able to run wide open throttle, you're talking about larger engines. You're talking about larger boats going offshore, or your recreational guys with engines that are 115 and up. Once you get down into talking about these little engines like Mega Adventure Overhang 4.7. What about a small outboard, a 2.4, 3.3, and a 5 horsepower small outboards? Should it run at max RPM because of it being so slow? By and large, most people are running, like if you're running on a dinghy or something, the engine's maxed out all the time. Like they're running wide open throttle all the way because, again, it's so slow. And the death of most of these small engines is you don't see a 5 horsepower that blows the power head. When you see a small engine that with a blown power head, it is because of lack of oil, lack of maintenance, water ingestion, and things like that. Poor fuel. That's what kills these small engines. These people on sailboats that have a 10 horsepower, 15, whatever on their dinghy, and they're going back and forth, when they leave their boat, that thing hits wide open throttle and all the way till they get to the dock, and then they shut it off, and then they go off in ashore, get their groceries, whatever they're doing, hang out, and then they get back on the dinghy, wide open throttle, back to the boat. Same thing for small lakes and stuff. You guys are running the engines wide open throttle all the time, and you don't hear about blown power heads. The whole conversation was that someone was telling someone else that because you're running the engine at wide open throttle, you're prematurely wearing out the power head. You don't see that. You don't see a 9.9 with a blown power head because the engine was run at wide open throttle, and everybody is running those engines maxed out all the time. So if you like this clip, you can watch the full podcast over here, or you can watch another clip over here.